Hello and welcome to this video workshop for your circular knitting machine with 22 needles. In this workshop I will demonstrate to you how you can make this lovely Volkswagen Bus with your circular knitting machine with just 22 needles and a few simple tricks. This project is part of a series of vehicles. In the description of this video you will find a link to all different vehicle videos I made. Please tell me in the comments where you are from and how you like this workshop. For this video workshop we need a few things. Of course, our circular knitting machine with 22 needles. It can be every machine. Colors yarn. And then you need a lot of stuffing. Your yarn needle that came with your machine, one or more. I'm using a crochet hook that's 5.5 millimeter. Use Google to find the size in your country. Of course, a pair of scissors. Stuffing. Optional, a rattle. And a pair of cartoon eyes or eyes that you like. You can also sew on buttons for the headlights and the brake lights, but I don't do that. I keep it simple, but you can put anything on them that you like. For this project you have to knit tubes with the use of the 1 second scrap yarn method on the beginning and on the end of some tubes. So you need a lot of scrap yarn and you need to knit tubes for the wheels with just the use of your working yarn. In the next chapter I show you how to prepare the wheels. Cast on with the color of your tire and knit 6 rows and then change and knit 2 rows in the color of your hubcap and cast off. And you have to knit 4 or 5 if you want a spare wheels. And now we are going to knit the tubes with the use of scrap yarn. I will demonstrate how to do that in the next chapter. I also demonstrate in that chapter how to close the tubes. So let's start with the first tube. You cast on with scrap yarn and you knit 25 rows in bottom color, 17 rows in car color, 17 rows in window color, 50 rows in the color of your roof, 17 rows in windows color, 17 rows in car color and 25 rows in bottom color, and you cast off with the scrap yarn. You knit that tube once. Then you have to knit 2 tubes in the color of your car, 50 rows, scrap yarn cast on and cast off, and exactly the same tubes 2 times for the windows. And then you need to close the tubes. And these are all the parts you need for your project and how to prepare them for assembling. See the next chapters. So start knitting and finishing off all those tubes. And then they are prepared for assembling. Assembling goes very quick. So knit, finish off and let's continue. You have to knit these tubes with the use of scrap yarn. I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can add the scrap yarn and how you can remove it very quick. First I'm going to start to knit with my scrap yarn a couple of rows. And then I'm going to change to another color of scrap yarn. I'm just cutting my yarn, putting it to the inside between the last and the first needle. And then I take another piece of scrap yarn and put it into my feeder, also between the last and the first needle. Make sure that the tails are long enough to reach the table. And knit one round, so every single needle has to pick the color once. I'm cutting my yarn and putting my tail between the last and the first needle, as every tail I have used. And then I'm taking my working yarn. I'm hanging a long piece of thread inside my machine because I'm going to use it to pick up my stitches and do whatever I want to do with them. I'm going to demonstrate to you how I like to close my tube. But first, you have to put your yarn between the last and the first needle. And then you are going to knit. So what have we done? We have started with scrap yarn, changed to another color and knit one round with scrap yarn. And now I'm just knitting my desired pattern. That's not interesting because that's for a special project. And now I'm finished. I'm cutting my yarn a long piece because I want to use it to close my tube. I'm taking it out of the feeder between the last and the first needle again. And then I'm going to put my scrap yarn into my feeder between the last and the first needle, and I'm going to knit one round. See, just the same place all the time between the last and the first needle. One round, so every needle just picks the yellow color in this case one time. I'm taking it out of the feeder and I'm taking another piece of scrap yarn. And I'm going to knit a couple of rounds with the scrap yarn. And after knitting a couple of rounds, there are no rules. I'm just cutting my yarn and knitting until my work drops from the machine. So I'm continue cranking when my yarn runs out until my project comes loose. Now I'm going to demonstrate how I'm going to close the tube. I'm going to close the tubes with the use of my 5.5mm crochet hook. It's 5.5mm. You can search for your size in your country. Tubes have two ends, the casting on and the casting off end, and we are going to start with the casting off end. I'm turning the inside to the outside and I'm going to show you the last knitted stitches with my working yarn that are captured between the scrap yarn. And when you put all those ends to the right, you will find your working yarn and you will find those two yarn tails of that single strand row. So those three ends we need. You see that the working yarn is in the middle and the yarn end closest to you goes into the first stitch we need to close the first pair. So I stick my needle through that last stitch and to the first stitch. Look, the working yarn is in the middle and those two yarn tails are coming out of those two stitches, and when you look at the rest of the stitches you will see that you can line them up easily into pairs. I'm putting my needles into all the pairs so you can see how it looks like. And this way you can see if you're doing it correct, because a tube with 22 stitches has 11 pair stitches. So I have to check if I have 11 pair. If not, I made a mistake with picking up those first pair, those first 2 stitches. Now I'm putting my needle into my last pair. Those are next to each other, but also in front of each other. And now I have 11 pairs. And I'm ready to close the pairs. So I'm sticking my crochet hook into that first 2 loops, and I'm taking my working yarn, and with the hook I'm going to pull the yarn through the 2 loops. And now I've started closing my tube. I'm going to pick up the next pair, pulling the yarn through all 3 loops on my hook. From now on I have 3 loops on my hook every time I'm going to close a pair. And I'm going to close all 11 pairs. And my last stitch, you always end with a pair. And then I'm pulling my yarn another time through that single loop, and the tube is closed. You have the scrap yarn tails on the right. I'm turning so that my working yarn is on the right, and now I'm going to pull out that single row with scrap yarn. That easy, and you can lift off the rest, and now this side of your tube, the end is closed. And now we have to close the beginning of the tube, and that first stitch is a little bit more difficult to find. The hidden stitch is easy to find, but most people make the mistake by not searching for it, so they look at the loops and they think that this stitch is the first stitch and this is the opposite stitch, but it's not. You have to look at where your scrap yarn goes through. Find the first 2 loops where the yarn ends of the scrap yarn go through, and then you will find that the piece closest to you, that stitch, is a little bit hidden. This is the first stitch and the opposite stitch, and the working yarn is in between. And when you're not sure, you are going to count your 11 pairs again, line them up, and my last pair, you always end with a pair, and then you continue closing as we did at the end of the tube, exactly the same way. When you are getting used to this, you don't need all those needles anymore. They are just for learning purpose. And sometimes I make also a mistake and I don't end up with a pair. And when I don't end up with a pair, I made a mistake. So I have to undo the closing by just pulling out those stitches and start over again with finding the real first pair. And then you close it the same way. In this step, I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can make wheels from your knitted tubes. It's very simple. You start with your casting off tail and you are going to pull it so that there will be a hole. Then you stick your needle to the inside and pull at the tail until the hole is completely closed, and then leave it hang. Then you are going to search for your pair of tails where the color changes. So don't use the tail you just pulled, but make sure you grab the pair and not those tails together. Then you are going to find your casting on tail, your start tail, and pull that slowly so that your tube will close, but make sure that you roll the ribs and those tails from the color change to the inside. Leave the casting off tail to the outside. Roll all the ribs to the inside and pull it tight. And then you pull at the tail of the casting off and you have a small flat circle, and you can just knot the two tails together and your wheel is ready for assembling. Don't cut the yarn tails because we need them for assembling. Form your wheel and it's finished. When you have a big wheel, it works exactly the same. Pull at the yarn tail that you use to cast off, stick it to the inside and pull the hole close. Then you are going to find the pair of the color change and you knot them together. I'm folding them around my finger because then I can put them to the inside automatically, and I'm going to pull at my casting on tail, making sure that all the ribs are rolling to the inside, leaving the cast off tail to the outside. Roll all the ribs to the inside, and when they are closed you just pull those two tails tight and your wheel will form, and knot the ends together when the flat circle is finished. And then you are ready for the next step, assembling the wheels to your vehicle. So this is how you make the wheels, and you're ready for the next step. Hello and welcome to this quick explanation how to join tubes knitted with your circular knitting machine to each other in all possible ways. You can join side to side. You can join end to end. You do that when you want to make a infinity tube, for example. And the last possibility is end to side. So I'm going to show you all three ways to join them. The first variation is end to end. I will demonstrate it to you and explain it with a little drawing. I take two ends of my tubes and I lay them in position. We are going to use V-stitches to join the tubes to each other. When you look at your work, you will find just under the edge V-stitches. They are all in one line and just next to each other. So you have to find your V-stitches one by one. They are all in line, so it's easy to find the top one. On the other end, you are going to find also the V-stitches from the right to the left. They are also in line, so it is easy to find them. We are going to join them one by one. So make sure that you understand how to find them, and then we are going to join them to each other like this. We are going to join one V-stitch to one V-stitch. And we repeat that to the end. I'm using a contrasting color so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to find myself the V-stitches. I'm starting with the one that's just at the edge or the corner. And I'm picking it up and I'm pulling my yarn through. Then I'm going to the other end and I find my first V-stitch. This one. And I'm going to pull my yarn through also, but not all the way. Make sure you keep a space between the two pieces. And then I'm going to pick up the next V-stitch at the first end. I'm pulling my yarn through, but not all the way. And then the second V-stitch on the other end. And this is basically what we keep repeating. Picking up V-stitches on one side and on the other side. Make sure you don't pull your yarn tight. And you are creating something like bars between the two pieces with your working yarn, and that's okay. Continue picking up those stitches one by one. And when you're finished or your yarn is a little bit short, you just have to pull at your yarn. And then I have to continue the last few V-stitches. And the ends are joined. And now I'm going to pull at my yarn. And you will see that the ends will be joined. Very nice. You can pull through your yarn all the way. I'm pulling it a little bit back because I don't need that much of yarn. Make sure the tension is right. And this is how you join the ends to each other. On the inside you have a nice ridge. And on the outside it looks as if it is knitted to each other. So when joining ends, just join the V-stitches one by one. The next joining is the joining side to side. We are going to join the sides of our tubes to each other. So I'm picking up my tubes, for example, like this. So we are going to join them in the length. I'm turning my example so it's more clear to see what I'm going to do. We are going to join the sides of our tubes. And that's very simple. I'm taking my contrasting yarn. We're going to join them like this. So when you put them like this, you will see lines with V-stitches along the edge. Again, those V-stitches. And when you line them up pretty, it looks like they're just knitted in one line. You see those V-stitches, they're just one row. See it as a rail track. And you are going to follow that track. When you stick your needle in the V-stitches, you will find those vertical bars, just like in a train track. And we are going to use those bars. We start joining with picking up one bar and joining it with a bar on the other side, and then we pick up pairs. We are going to pick up 2 bars at a time, just like the V-stitches, but this looks a little bit different, and you end sometimes with 1 pair, but I will demonstrate. I'm going to stick my needle in the first V and I'm going to find the bar. That's basically the back of the V-stitch. It's just one, yes, little piece of yarn. Then I'm going to stick my needle in the first V-stitch on the other tube. And now I keep space in between, just as with the ends. And I'm going to stick my needle in where it came out. Those are big holes. And I'm going to pick up 2 bars a time. Go in where you came out, pick up the next 2 bars. Make sure you get the vertical bars, the right ones, not the V-stitches. Go in where you came out, pick up the next pair and pair them up. Don't pull at your yarn that it goes tight, because then you cannot see clear what you are doing. Continue picking up 2 bars at a time. Don't skip bars. Don't go under twice. Just continue following the rail track, picking up the next pair of bars. Do that as far as possible, as long as your tubes are. This might look a little bit messy, but when you pull at your yarn, your tubes will be joined seamless. Your work will look like as if it is knitted in one piece on both sides. So when you join tubes side to side, it's usable on 2 sides. It's very simple. Just pair up the vertical bars under the V-stitches. So this is the second option, joining sides to sides. Then we have the last option, and that's joining the end to the side. I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to join the end to the side. Using also the contrasting color. We want to make it look like this. So for that I make a little drawing and explanation, and then I will show you how you have to join the end to the side of a tube. That is also very simple. You already know how to find V-stitches and how to find those bars, and we are going to combine them. So we are going to use the bars at the side, and we are going to use the V-stitches at the end. We are picking up 1 V-stitch at a time, and we are going one by one all the way. On the side we are going to pick up bars. First V-stitch 1 bar, second V-stitch 2 bars. First V-stitch 1 bar, second V-stitch 2 bars. So we are going to alternate the bars. I'm going to demonstrate picking up the first V-stitch, and I'm going to pick up 1 bar, because with every first stitch I pick up 1 bar. Keep space between the tubes. I'm picking up V-stitch number 2, and when I'm picking up V-stitch number 2, I'm picking up 2 bars. We are working in a series of 2 V-stitches, so I'm starting over. The third one is named number 1, picking up 1 bar. And the next one is number 2, and at V-stitch number 2 I have to pick up 2 bars. 1 V-stitch, 1 bar, second V-stitch, 2 bars. And continue all the way. You pick up 1 V-stitch at a time, and you alternate 1 bar and 2 bars. This V-stitch number 2, I have to pick up 2 bars. 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, and go as far as possible. And then you just simple pull at your yarn. You can pull at whatever yarn tail you like, and your work will close nice, without wrinkles, as if it's knitted together. A little rich on the inside and on the outside, complete seamless. And this is how you join tubes with the end to the side. You join V-stitches 2 bars, alternating 1 and 2. We also know how to join the ends of the tubes to each other with the V-stitches. And now we know how to join the sides to each other by joining pairs of vertical bars, which gives a very nice seamless texture. First we are going to make 2 panels, the side panels, by just assembling these 4 pieces into one. First we are going to join these 2 tubes, put them like this, with the tails like this, and put one of the window color tails into your yarn needle. And then we are going to join those 2 tubes to each other using the vertical bars on the edges from the left to the right, all the way. So let's show it. You are going to pair up those vertical bars as I showed in a chapter before, where to join all those different sides. So join these 2 tubes into one panel. Go as far as possible, and then you just pull at your yarn tail, and your work will close seamless as if it's knitted in one piece. Make sure the tension is constant all the way, and don't mind those edges, they will disappear. Knot these 2 tails to each other. Don't cut them, we need them later. And now we are going to join the wheels. I'm going to use a lot of needles, but you basically just need one. I'm going to put all the yarn tails from my wheels into my yarn needle. I like to put a needle on every tail, but you can also do it one by one. But I like to make small production lines, and I have enough needles, and it feels like it works up quicker. First we are going to join the wheels to the panel and then secure them. We have to make two identical panels and we try to get the wheels in the same spots. That's very simple. You are going to count a couple of stitches from the side. So you count a number of V-stitches from the side and then you go a couple of rows up. You are doing the same for all 4 wheels. Sticking your needle in that spot and then you are going to take your second end and stick that a stitch further through, and then you pull at both tails. Make sure your yarn ends don't get tangled. Pull the wheel tight to the panel and knot the 2 tails together on the inside. Don't cut them. And then we are going to join the second wheel mirror-wise in the same spot. So I'm going to count my stitches from the side and upwards, and I stick in my first needle, and then I pull through a little bit and I take my second needle and I'm going to pull through a little bit further, and my second wheel is attached, and I'm going to knot those tails also together. And now we need to secure our wheels, and for that I'm using the yarn tail in the color of my tire, and I'm simply going to stitch through the layers the wheel to the panel, but I'm making sure that I keep away from the edge because I need the edge to assemble the van. So I'm simply going to stitch through the layers with the color of my tire, through the color of my tire. I'm making a half circle and I don't stitch along the side, I keep away from the side. Half a circle is enough. So don't go to the edge, but keep away, keep space. And when you're done, end on the back, and you are going to knot those 2 tails together again. This is the inside, nobody will notice. It will disappear when the pieces are assembled, so you can just simply knot. And when you're finished knotting, you are going to cut about this length, so I can recognize the tails that are secured. And then I'm going to do the same with the second wheel. I'm going to stitch half a circle. And then one part is finished and you make another one exactly the same. And then you are ready for the next step. When you want to add a spare wheel, join it all the way around. Now we have to prepare our tube so we can assemble it to our panels. And for that we need to make it into a circle and we have to join these two ends to each other. So I'm going to do that. It's the very simple method where we are going to join V-stitches to V-stitches. I will pick the drawing. We are going to join V-stitches to V-stitches as demonstrated in the short video, a chapter before. I'm done. I'm going to pull at my yarn and the two edges will close very nice. Make sure the tension is all right. And then we are ready for the next step. Leave the tails and we are going to assemble the tube to one panel. Joining is simple. We are going to use the same method we used to make a panel. And then we are going to use the method where we are going to join the V-stitches to bars. So that's for the back side and for the front the same. So you have to join the complete panel all the way around. And of course I will demonstrate how I am going to do that. I'm going to start with the yarn tail on my panel at the front. I'm putting that yarn tail into my needle and I'm going to join the V-stitches to the vertical bars, and I'm going to attach it by picking up the first bar in the color of my car. And then I'm going to join V-stitches to vertical bars in the color of my car until I reach the part where the color changed to the window color. I reached my window color, so I can continue, but I'm not going to continue with this color. I'm going to change color because there's a yarn tail in the color of my window, so I'm going to put my yarn end of the color of my car to the inside, and I am going to change color to the window color. I'm picking up the longest yarn tail. And then I simply continue joining the front to the front until I reach the roof. When you have knitted correct, it will fit, and otherwise you can smuggle a little bit. So I'm going to close the inside where I changed the color by just making a little circle on the inside around that cross point. And then I simply going to knot those two tails together. Look, when I pull it tight, it's closed, and on the outside it will be very nice. So, join them, knot them, and cut them. Then you know that you are finished with them. Don't cut them short, but always about, I use 10 centimeters. And then you are ready to continue joining the roof to the window. And that's the same way you have joined the two tubes into a panel. I'm almost done. Stop at the point where the color of your roof changes into your window color and pull at your yarn. Then fold your work around the corner and continue joining the window to the window by joining V-stitches to bars, just as you did on the front. I'm at my color change, but now I'm going to continue with this piece of yarn. Make sure that the tension is correct everywhere, since there is no tail to change to. I'm going to change my tail at the corner, because that tail I'm going to use to close the button. But now I continue with my current tail, because you will not see it. Nobody will know. So continue joining V-stitches to bars. I go all the way to the corner, I pull at my yarn, and now I'm going to change color. And I'm going to close the bottom to the side panel. That's basically the same, joining bars to bars. We only have to do a little thing in the middle where the tube is joined into a circle. I'm almost at the point in the middle. And at that point I have to smuggle a little bit. I'm going to go through both tubes as if it's under 2 bars. And then I'm going to check if the track is correct, and then I can always cheat a little bit and continue picking up bars. And then you will barely notice what happened there. And then you continue closing all the way to the end. Go as far as possible, smuggle if needed. And when you're at the end, you just poke your needle to the inside. And then you pull at your yarn and make sure that the tension is correct all the way. And now we are going to cut, knot and end off all those yarn tails. I start with this one and I'm going to make a little circle around that cross point to make sure there's no hole on the inside and make a knot. And then I'm going to cut this tail so I know that it's finished off. So there will be no little hole on the outside. This one I have to knot. And cut. Let's see what I have more. This is finished. It's okay. I'm ready for the next panel. And I'm going to join that exactly the same way. Only I'm not going to close it all the way. I need an opening to put stuffing in. So now you are going to join the panel all the way around to the tube, leaving a hole to stuff. And you are going to color change the same way. Don't forget to add the eyes before you are finished. You add them to the front. You can add them wherever you like. Eyes give a very different personality to your project. Time to stuff. I'm going to put stuffing in. Make sure you put it in the corners. Don't overstuff. Don't stretch your knitting. This is going to be a soft pillow, a soft toy. So you have to feel a little bit how much stuffing you need. Don't forget your rattle. I'm going to stick it into the stuffing. and continue stuff. You can always stuff until you are almost finished closing, but put in most of the stuff now. And when you're satisfied, continue closing. And I'm making my last stitches. I'm doing the magic pull at my yarn once again. And my van is ready. I only have to tuck away the last yarn tail. I'm making a little knot. And I'm poking it to the inside and let it come out somewhere else. And I'm going to cut that yarn tail. And ta-da! My bus is finished. And this is the end of the workshop. If you like this workshop, please let me know by leaving a comment under the video and giving me a thumb up. Please keep on watching this video to the end, then you can see all kinds of different projects you can make with my free video workshops. In the description of this video you will find a lot of helpful links and also the links to my different types of social media. In the future there will be a second series and a third series with vehicles and also a roadmap blanket and a Christmas train. So stay tuned, join this channel. Stay safe, with love from Holland. Bye bye.